It was a typical Saturday morning when I first found out. The sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting warm beams over the coffee table. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through my phone, when the text popped up on my screen. "Hey, just wanted to let you know, we're all getting together for the family reunion next weekend. Hope you can make it." At first, I thought it was just another casual invite, but as I read it again, something didn't sit right. I hadn't been part of the family reunion planning. In fact, I hadn't heard a single word about it from anyone else. I stared at the message, my heart suddenly heavy. I thought maybe I missed the group chat, or perhaps they had forgotten about me. But then I remembered no one had even reached out in weeks. Not even a casual, "How's it going?" from anyone. I typed back, trying to keep my voice steady. "Wait, reunion?" I didn't even know it was happening. A minute later, the reply came, quick and almost too eager. "Yeah, it was kinda last minute. Sorry, we didn't send out the full invite. Anyway, would be great if you could make it." It was a classic brush-off, the kind that made it clear I wasn't a priority. I put my phone down and stared at the screen, my mind racing. What had happened? How had I been excluded from something so important, something that had always been a cornerstone of our family? The thought hit me like a ton of bricks. They left me out. Just like that, no explanation. "No, we'll be in touch soon," or "we'll make sure to include you next time." It felt deliberate, like an afterthought. I wasn't prepared for how deeply it would affect me. For years, family reunions had been a time of laughter, joy, and connection. We'd all pile into my aunt's house for the weekend, cooking big meals, reminiscing about the old days, and pretending we weren't all just a little too dysfunctional for our own good. But it was family, and despite all our differences, it was home. It was supposed to be our thing. Yet, somehow, I had become an afterthought. The invite felt like an obligation, like someone was checking off a box, not a genuine effort to bring me back into the fold. I stood up from the kitchen table, my coffee forgotten. The house felt suddenly too quiet. I paced, my thoughts running in circles. What had I done wrong? Was I too much of a black sheep? Or worse, had they decided I wasn't worth the effort anymore? The questions piled up, each one more painful than the last. I grabbed my phone again, determined to get to the bottom of it. I scrolled through the group chat, but there was no mention of the reunion. In fact, I hadn't been included in any of the conversations leading up to it. I thought back to the last time I spoke to anyone in the family. It had been months, and even then, it had been nothing more than a brief hello. Was I just forgotten? I needed answers. I hit up my cousin, Jenna, one of the few people I thought I could still count on. She was the one who had always been the closest to me, and if anyone would know what was going on, it was her. "Hey, Jenna, can I ask you something?" I typed out, hoping she would reply soon. Seconds later, the bubbles popped up, and I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Sure. What's up? Didn't know about the family reunion. What's going on?" I thought we were all getting together. A minute passed. No reply. Then another. And another. I stared at the screen, biting my lip. Something felt off. Finally, my phone buzzed. Jenna's reply was simple, almost too simple. "Yeah, it's been planned for a while. Everyone's going, but we didn't have a formal invite for you. I guess we thought you weren't interested." The words hit harder than I expected. We thought you weren't interested. It felt like a punch in the gut. Had I really become so distant from the family that they assumed I wouldn't want to be there? Had I really been forgotten that easily? The sting of the exclusion was overwhelming. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room. But instead, I just sat there, frozen, the weight of the situation sinking in. I had always prided myself on being part of this family. Even when things were tough, even when the chaos seemed to push me away, I always showed up. But now I was being left behind. Left out. I didn't respond to Jenna's message. I couldn't. My mind was swirling with too many thoughts, too many emotions. But as the minutes passed and the hurt slowly turned into a quiet fury, something in me snapped. Maybe I wasn't going to let this slide. Maybe it was time to find out exactly what was going on. Because there was something else that lingered in the back of my mind, something I couldn't shake. The family had always wanted the beach house. It was the one thing everyone in the family dreamed of having, and it was something I had inherited from a distant relative who had passed away the previous year. I hadn't told anyone yet, mainly because I hadn't figured out what I wanted to do with it. It was a sprawling, old house overlooking the coast, a place where summers were spent by the ocean, and every year someone would mention how great it would be if the family could use it. What if this was about that beach house? I clenched my fist. No one had mentioned it yet, but I knew deep down that this exclusion had to be more than just a casual oversight. Maybe they didn't just forget me, they were deliberately keeping me out. And now, they wanted back in. I stood up from the couch, pacing the living room as I mulled over my options. It wasn't just the reunion anymore. It was about family, control, and something much bigger. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? It wasn't always like this. There was a time when I truly felt part of the family. A time when the thought of a family reunion was as exciting as Christmas morning. My cousins, my aunts and uncles, even the distant relatives I only saw once a year, they were my people. Our bond was something I never questioned, something I thought would always remain unbreakable. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Growing up, my family wasn't perfect, no family is. But there was always this underlying sense of togetherness, of being in it together. My mother, Lily, had always been the glue that held us together. She was the one who orchestrated every reunion, every holiday gathering, making sure that despite our flaws, we came together and celebrated what made us family. I remember the summers spent at the beach house. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the smell of salt water in the air, the warm sand between my toes. Those were the days when everything felt right. We'd all pile into the house, laughing until our stomachs hurt, eating too much food, and staying up late into the night, playing board games and telling stories. There was something magical about those moments, a feeling of belonging that I now realize I took for granted. But it wasn't just the beach house that made those summers special. It was the people. The long walks with my cousin Jenna along the shore, the late-night talks with my Uncle Charlie about life, the way my Aunt Marissa always brought that perfect potato salad. Those were the people who made the house feel like home. And as much as the place itself was beautiful, it was the love, the shared history, the familiarity of it all that made it so unforgettable. It was during one of those summer vacations that I started to notice the cracks. At first, they were small. Little moments that didn't mean much at the time. Maybe it was my cousin Tyler calling me out on something silly, or my Aunt Helen's sharp comment that felt a little too pointed. But over time, the comments grew sharper, the gatherings became less frequent, and the distance between us started to grow. I never knew exactly when it happened, but somehow I became the odd one out. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a single event that pushed me away. It was a slow, almost imperceptible drift. People stopped calling as often. Invitations stopped coming. And when they did, they always felt like an afterthought, a last-minute decision that left me questioning whether I was still truly part of the family. I could point to several moments, but the one that really stung was the year of my graduation. I'd worked so hard to earn my degree, and when the ceremony came around, I thought for sure that my family would be there. I imagined them sitting in the audience, cheering me on, proud of me. But when the day arrived, only my mom showed up. No cousins. No aunts. No uncles. They all had something else going on. It was a crushing blow, but I tried to shrug it off. I figured maybe they didn't understand how important it was to me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the graduation. It was about something bigger, the way I had slowly become invisible to them. The phone calls grew more infrequent. Holidays passed without much fanfare. I still made an effort to reach out, to send a text on birthdays or drop a line during the holidays, but the responses became colder and more distant. It was like I didn't matter anymore. It was only when I left for college that I realized how deep the rift had become. At first, I thought it was just a phase. That once I got back home, everything would go back to normal. But it didn't. The distance between me and the rest of the family only seemed to grow. The phone calls became less frequent, the invites even rarer. I was left wondering if they even remembered I existed. And after a while, I stopped trying. Why keep reaching out when they clearly didn't care? My mom tried to make excuses for them. She told me it was just life, that people got busy. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something more was going on, something I wasn't privy to. The truth was, I felt abandoned, forgotten. And it wasn't just about the family gatherings or the beach house. It was about the fact that the people I thought I could always count on had somehow moved on without me. And then came the beach house. I don't even know why my distant relative left it to me. It wasn't a close relationship, and I hadn't spent much time with them. But one day, a lawyer called to tell me that I had inherited the property. To be honest, I wasn't sure how to feel. On the one hand, it was a beautiful place, a part of my family's history. On the other hand, it felt like a strange and distant gift, one that had no immediate connection to me. I never told anyone about the inheritance. Part of me was reluctant, unsure of how they would react. I wasn't sure if I wanted to deal with the expectations or, worse, the entitled attitudes I knew would follow. What if this was about that beach house? I clenched my fist. No one had mentioned it yet, but I knew deep down that this exclusion had to be more than just a casual oversight. Maybe they didn't just forget me, they were deliberately keeping me out. And now, they wanted back in. I stood up from the couch, pacing the living room as I mulled over my options. It wasn't just the reunion anymore. It was about family, control, and something much bigger. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? It wasn't always like this. There was a time when I truly felt part of the family. A time when the thought of a family reunion was as exciting as Christmas morning. My cousins, my aunts and uncles, even the distant relatives I only saw once a year, they were my people. Our bond was something I never questioned, something I thought would always remain unbreakable. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Growing up, my family wasn't perfect, no family is. But there was always this underlying sense of togetherness, of being in it together. My mother, Lily, had always been the glue that held us together. She was the one who orchestrated every reunion, every holiday gathering, making sure that despite our flaws, we came together and celebrated what made us family. I remember the summers spent at the beach house. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the smell of salt water in the air, the warm sand between my toes. Those were the days when everything felt right. We'd all pile into the house, laughing until our stomachs hurt, eating too much food, and staying up late into the night, playing board games and telling stories. There was something magical about those moments, a feeling of belonging that I now realize I took for granted. But it wasn't just the beach house that made those summers special. It was the people. The long walks with my cousin Jenna along the shore, the late-night talks with my Uncle Charlie about life, the way my Aunt Marissa always brought that perfect potato salad. Those were the people who made the house feel like home. And as much as the place itself was beautiful, it was the love, the shared history, the familiarity of it all that made it so unforgettable. It was during one of those summer vacations that I started to notice the cracks. At first, they were small. Little moments that didn't mean much at the time. Maybe it was my cousin Tyler calling me out on something silly, or my Aunt Helen's sharp comment that felt a little too pointed. But over time, the comments grew sharper, the gatherings became less frequent, and the distance between us started to grow. Weird? I repeated, a chill creeping into my voice. Weird how? It's just, well, you know how it is. Everyone's busy. It's not personal, it's just, well, you've kind of been doing your own thing lately, and I could hear the hesitation in his voice, and I cut him off. You mean you guys didn't want me there? That's what this is about, right? You didn't even bother to tell me about the reunion. And now that you found out I own the beach house, suddenly, you want me to come. There was a long pause. Look, it's not like that. Honestly, we didn't even know about the house until… Until what? I interrupted. Until it came out that I inherited it? Is that it, Tyler? I could feel my blood starting to boil. Every word they had said to me over the years, every time they had ignored me, every time I had reached out only to be met with silence, it all came rushing back in an instant. Come on, I'm just saying, this whole thing is complicated, all right? He replied, his voice defensive now. We didn't mean to make you feel like you were left out. Then why did you? Why did no one call? Why was I the last to know about everything? Tyler didn't answer right away. Instead, he let out a slow, frustrated breath. I don't know, all right? I really don't. But I'm not the one who's been acting weird about this, okay? It's the rest of the family, not me. I gritted my teeth, trying to keep my emotions in check. You're all acting the same, Tyler. You think I don't notice? But that's fine. I get it. I'm just the last one to the party now, right? He didn't have an answer to that. Tell everyone I'm not coming to the reunion, I said, my voice colder now than it had been. But I'll see them soon enough. Maybe I'll have a few things to say. Before he could respond, I hung up. I felt a mixture of relief and anger as I stared at my phone. I hadn't expected him to give me any real answers. He was part of the problem, and deep down, I knew it. Tyler wasn't the one I needed to be afraid of. It was everyone else, the people who had taken me for granted, who had excluded me without hesitation. But I had something they wanted now, and I wasn't going to just give it to them. Not without making them realize what they had lost. Later that night, I got a message from my Aunt Marissa. It was brief, a simple, "Hi, we missed you at the reunion planning meeting today. Hope everything's okay. Let's talk soon." I stared at it for a while, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was trying to seem concerned, trying to appear like the loving aunt who just wanted to get things back to normal. But it was too late for that. She wasn't going to pull me back in with a few kind words. I responded with one sentence. You missed me? Really? How about reaching out to me for once before the next reunion? I didn't expect her to reply right away, and she didn't. But I knew she would. After all, she and the rest of the family wanted something from me. They wanted the beach house. They wanted control, and they were going to try everything to get it. But they didn't know me anymore. The next few days were a whirlwind of calls, messages, and awkward encounters with family members I hadn't seen in months. They were all trying to play nice, trying to pretend like nothing had changed, like they hadn't left me behind and now suddenly wanted back in. I wasn't fooled. They hadn't learned their lesson yet. But they would. Because this time, I wasn't the one trying to fit into their world. This time, I was the one holding the cards. It didn't take long for the rest of the family to start circling. The phone calls became more frequent, the text messages a bit too eager, and the doorbell rang one afternoon when I least expected it. I hadn't made up my mind yet about how I was going to handle this, but I knew one thing for sure. They couldn't just waltz back into my life as though nothing had happened. I wasn't some tool they could use when they needed something. This beach house, the one they had always envied, was mine, and they were going to have to respect that. The first knock on the door came 2 days after my conversation with Tyler. It was my Aunt Marissa, standing on the other side, wearing a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She looked as if she had practiced her expression in the car, rehearsing just the right balance of warmth and casualness. "Hey there," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "I thought I'd drop by. It's been a while, and I wanted to check in on you." I folded my arms across my chest, leaning against the doorframe. "Funny, I don't remember you ever checking in before." She shifted a little, clearly thrown off by my bluntness. "Well, I just wanted to see how you were doing. It's been tough, hasn't it? Everything with the family, I mean. I raised an eyebrow. Tough? Tough for who, exactly? Me? Or you guys? Marissa's smile faltered for a split second, but she recovered quickly. Oh, honey, don't be like that. We're family. And I know we've all been busy, but I want you to know that we miss you. We want to make things right. We should all get together again. Let's have a proper family reunion, okay? Really? That's what this is about. I shot back, my voice cold now. You miss me? Or do you miss what I've got? Her eyes flickered, but she kept her composure. What do you mean by that? I didn't hesitate. You want the beach house, don't you? Her lips tightened, and for a moment, she looked like she was about to say something, but instead, she just let out a heavy sigh. Look, it's not just about the house. It's about family. You know, bringing everyone back together, sharing memories. We were thinking it might be nice to host a big reunion here at the beach house. You can be a part of that. We all can. The way she said it, with such feigned sweetness, made me sick. I could see it now. The plan had already been set in motion. They weren't just looking for a reunion. They were looking to reclaim control. The beach house wasn't just a home to them, it was an asset, a piece of property that gave them leverage. They needed me to cooperate, to open the door to them. And they were going to try every trick in the book to make it happen. I'm not stupid, Marissa, I said, taking a step closer, the air between us growing tense. You're not fooling me. You all think you can just waltz back into my life, make nice, and pretend like everything is fine. But it's not. And you want this beach house more than you want me. She didn't say anything. Her lips parted, but no words came out. It was clear now that she didn't have a solid comeback. The truth was out. The game had been revealed. Tell the rest of the family that I'll think about the reunion, I added, my voice firm and resolute. But don't bother showing up at the beach house unless you're willing to be real with me. Marissa's expression softened, and for the briefest moment, I saw a flicker of regret. Maybe she was starting to realize the gravity of the situation. But that was her problem now, not mine. She didn't respond right away. She just nodded, the mask of politeness starting to slip. Okay, I'll let them know. But we still want to make things right, all right? Just don't shut us out. I didn't bother answering. I just turned and walked back inside, closing the door gently behind me. I had made my point. It wasn't about forgiveness or family unity anymore. It was about power. And I had the upper hand. But as much as I wanted to think that was the last time I'd have to deal with them, I knew better. That was just the beginning. The family wouldn't give up easily. They never did. The next few days passed in a blur of texts and calls. Everyone from my Uncle Charlie to my cousin Jenna reached out. They were all saying the same thing. Let's talk. Let's fix this. But I wasn't buying it. They hadn't cared enough to reach out when I needed them, and now they were all suddenly so concerned. I could see their game. They were trying to wear me down, trying to make me second-guess my decision to hold my ground. They wanted to break me down with false kindness, to make me feel guilty for not wanting to open my arms to them after everything that had happened. But I wasn't going to let that happen. The doorbell rang again a few days later. This time, it was Tyler. He was standing there, his hands stuffed in his pockets, his shoulders slumped as if he was preparing for a long talk. Can we talk? He asked, his voice low. I didn't let him in right away. What's this really about, Tyler? What are you after? I don't know what you're thinking, he said, looking genuinely frustrated now. But we've been a family for years. All of us. And if we don't figure this out, it's going to fall apart. I just want things to go back to the way they were. That's not possible, I replied, my voice hard. Not anymore. I'm sorry for how everything went down. Really. But we need the beach house, okay? We need this to bring us back together. You're not the only one hurting here. I took a long breath, letting his words sink in. He didn't get it. They didn't get it. This wasn't just about a beach house. It was about respect. It was about dignity. Tyler, I said slowly, my words like ice, You can't just waltz in here, asking for something, after all this time. It's too late for that. Please, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. I don't want to lose you. I stared at him for a long moment. This wasn't going to be easy, but I had to stand firm. You already have, I said, before turning and walking away from the door. The silence that followed Tyler's departure felt heavier than I expected. I thought I'd be relieved, like I'd finally gotten my point across. But instead, a part of me was unsettled, like something was looming just beneath the surface. It wasn't just the beach house. It wasn't even about the family anymore. This was bigger. It was about me reclaiming my life and my space after so many years of feeling invisible. But the weight of that realization sat heavily on my chest. I'd been so focused on standing my ground, on keeping them at bay, that I hadn't considered the emotional toll it was taking on me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, my Aunt Marissa, Tyler, all of them, pleading for my attention, for my forgiveness. But it was too late for apologies now. What bothered me the most wasn't their sudden urgency, but how easily they thought they could just come back into my life. As if nothing had changed. But something had changed. I had changed. At 2 a.m., I found myself standing in the living room, staring out at the dark ocean that stretched out in front of me. The moonlight glistened off the water like shards of silver, calm and quiet. It was beautiful, but somehow lonely too. The place that once felt like a safe haven now felt like a fortress I was trapped inside. I took a long breath, letting the cool air fill my lungs, before I stepped outside onto the patio. The wind whipped through my hair, and I shivered, pulling my jacket tighter around me. It was in moments like these that I realized how much I'd been holding in. I had been so consumed with anger toward my family for abandoning me that I hadn't stopped to grieve the loss of the connection we once had. Maybe I was angry because deep down I missed them. I missed feeling like I mattered. The sound of my phone vibrating on the table behind me cut through my thoughts. I reluctantly turned around to see a new message from my cousin Jenna. We need to talk. Please. It's about the beach house. I know you're upset, but I don't want to lose you. I stared at the message for a long time. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. I knew she was just a pawn in all of this, caught between wanting to make things right and being loyal to the family. But I couldn't let that cloud my judgment. I tapped out a quick response. I'm not the one who's been lost, Jenna. You all are. I didn't wait for her reply. Instead, I walked over to the bookshelf, pulling out an old photo album from my childhood. As I flipped through the pages, memories began to surface: family vacations, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. We were close once. I could feel the warmth of those moments, the laughter, the sense of belonging. And yet, it all seemed so distant now, like a different life. A life I could never go back to. Suddenly, a new wave of emotion hit me, and I closed the album with a snap. I had been holding on to those memories, but it was time to let go. They had moved on from me, and I had to move on from them too. This beach house, this place that was supposed to be a symbol of love and family, had become something else, something cold and transactional. It wasn't a family home anymore. It was a battleground. The doorbell rang again, just as the sun began to rise. My heart skipped a beat. I had expected it. They weren't done yet. They would never be done until they got what they wanted. This time, I didn't hesitate. I walked to the door, opened it, and found Jenna standing there. She looked tired, her eyes red from crying, and there was a sense of urgency about her that I hadn't seen before. I need you to listen, she said before I could even say anything. Please. Just hear me out. I crossed my arms. I've heard enough, Jenna. No, you haven't, she said, shaking her head. You don't understand. This isn't just about the house. It's not about the money, or the property, or any of that. It's about us. About what we used to have. I know we've all screwed up, but I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose the family we were. Her words hit harder than I expected. I wasn't prepared for the rawness in her voice, the pain behind every syllable. I could see the vulnerability in her eyes, the same vulnerability I had been hiding from for so long. "I've spent years resenting you all," I admitted, my voice trembling. "And maybe that's part of why I'm so angry. But I can't just pretend everything is okay. It's not." "I know," she said softly. "But we can fix this. Together. It doesn't have to be like this. The family, it's falling apart, and it's all because of this stupid house. We don't need the house. We need you." I looked at her, unsure of what to say. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what we had. But before I could respond, something inside me stopped me. There was a part of me that still couldn't let go of the anger, the bitterness, the years of feeling abandoned. "I don't know," I said, my voice wavering. "Maybe it's too late. Maybe the damage is already done." Jenna took a deep breath. "Please, don't give up on us. Don't give up on me." For a moment, I just stood there, looking at her. I could see how much she cared. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and I felt it, too. But I wasn't sure I was ready to forgive. I wasn't sure I could forget the way they had shut me out for so long. Then, out of nowhere, something happened, something I hadn't expected. "Jenna," I began, my voice cracking as I spoke. I didn't just inherit the house, you know." She looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "I inherited it from my mom," I said softly. "She left me everything. The beach house. The property. All of it." The truth hung in the air between us. The weight of that secret settled in my chest, making everything feel even more complicated. I could see the shift in Jenna's face as she processed what I had just said. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the legacy. And the legacy meant something to all of us. Something deeper than we had realized. Jenna's face shifted from confusion to shock, and then, slowly, to something resembling awe. I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she processed the weight of my words. The truth was out now. The beach house wasn't just a property, it was a symbol, a family heirloom that carried with it more than just financial value. It was a connection to the past, a connection to my mother, and to all the memories that had been buried under years of neglect and abandonment. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence felt thicker than ever before, hanging heavily between us like an invisible wall. Finally, it was Jenna who broke the quiet. "Your mom," she trailed off, her voice barely above a whisper. "She left it all to you?" I nodded, looking down at the floor, not sure where to go from here. There was so much I hadn't shared with anyone. My mother had passed away a few years ago, but the pain of losing her still lingered. And with her death, the house had been left to me. It was my inheritance, my responsibility. But no one had known that. No one had known about the will. No one had understood the significance of what was mine, what I was holding on to. "I never told anyone," I said quietly, feeling the weight of the secret I'd kept for so long. "Not because I didn't trust you or anyone else, but because I didn't want to be seen as someone who was just about the property. I wanted to prove that I could stand on my own, that I didn't need to rely on the family." Jenna took a step closer, her eyes softening. "I get it. I really do. But it doesn't have to be like that. You don't have to do this alone. We all screwed up, yes. But maybe this can be the turning point. Maybe we can come together again, but this time, for real. For you. For what matters." I swallowed hard, fighting back the lump in my throat. The emotions were flooding in faster than I could process. What Jenna said made sense, and yet it felt so difficult to believe. After all the years of being excluded, of feeling like an afterthought, could I really open up again? Could I really trust them? "I don't know, Jenna," I admitted, my voice shaky. "I've spent so long trying to protect myself from all of you, and now you want me to just forget everything? Forget how you all walked away and pretended I didn't matter." She flinched at my words, but her expression didn't harden. Instead, It softened, as if she understood the depth of my hurt. I know we've hurt you. I know we've made mistakes, but we've learned too. And we don't want to lose you. You're family. You matter. This house, it's not just a piece of property. It's a part of all of us. Your mom would want us to be together. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't thought about it that way before. The beach house wasn't just a house. It was a part of my mom. A part of our family history. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to let go of the anger and start thinking about what that legacy meant. But it wasn't easy. The anger, the hurt, it was all still there, lingering just beneath the surface. I wasn't ready to forgive just yet. But maybe I could start to understand. I don't know if I'm ready, I said, looking at her with uncertainty. I don't know if I can trust you all again. After everything. I get it, Jenna replied softly. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I just want us to try. To rebuild. Not for the house, not for the property, but for us. For family. The sincerity in her voice made my chest tighten. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that things could be different. But there was a part of me that was still afraid. Afraid of getting hurt again. Afraid of trusting them and being let down once more. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing, my heart heavy with conflicting emotions. Finally, I spoke, my voice quiet but firm. I can't promise anything. Not yet. But I'll think about it. I'll think about what you said. Jenna smiled, a small, hopeful expression that made her look younger than she had in years. That's all I'm asking for. Just think about it. As she turned to leave, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't a fix. But it was a step. A small step toward something I had long since abandoned, the idea of family. The idea of belonging. Later that night, as I sat alone in the living room, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Tyler. I'm sorry for how I acted earlier. I just want us to be okay again. Can we meet tomorrow? I stared at the message for a long time before typing my reply. I'll think about it. That was all I could offer him, all I could offer anyone at that point. I wasn't ready to jump into the chaos again, but I wasn't ready to shut the door completely either. As I looked out the window at the moonlit ocean, I felt a sense of uncertainty hanging in the air. There was so much unresolved. So much I still didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, the pieces could start to fall into place. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe there was still a chance to rebuild. The days passed in a blur. I spent most of my time at the beach house, the rhythmic sound of the waves providing a strange comfort. But my mind was anything but calm. Jenna's words kept echoing in my head, we don't want to lose you. Your family. Every time I tried to push them away, every time I told myself I didn't need them, the truth nagged at me. The truth was that they were right. We were family. But did that mean anything anymore? I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I'd built for myself was suddenly on the verge of being torn down. The beach house was mine, but that ownership now felt like a heavy burden. It wasn't just about the property or the memories attached to it. It was about the connection it symbolized. My mom had left me everything, every square inch of sand, every wave that crashed against the shore, every sunset I'd watched as a child. She had trusted me with the family's legacy, and now I was responsible for protecting it. But protecting it from what? From my own family? The thought was unsettling. I had spent so many years making my peace with the fact that I was alone, that I didn't need anyone else to define my life. And now it felt like everything was shifting again. It was like a game of tug-of-war. Part of me wanted to reach out, to heal the wounds that had been festering for so long, while another part of me screamed to keep them all at arm's length. They had walked away once, hadn't they? They had left me out of the family reunion. They had left me to face the loss of my mom alone. And now they wanted back in. That's what hurt the most, I realized. They didn't want to fix the past. They didn't want to rebuild our family on the foundation of honesty and understanding. They wanted to pick up where they left off, as if nothing had changed, as if I hadn't spent years grieving on my own. The thought stung more than I cared to admit. One morning, after another restless night of tossing and turning, I finally decided I needed a change of scenery. I grabbed my keys and drove out, letting the wind whip through my hair as I navigated the winding roads that led me out of the small town. I needed time to think, time to escape the pressure of the beach house and the weight of everyone's expectations. I ended up at a small cafe overlooking a quiet lake, the kind of place that felt like it existed outside of time. The slow pace of the world around me helped to calm my racing thoughts, but as I sipped my coffee and stared out at the water, a familiar face appeared across the room. Tyler. He didn't see me at first, his back turned as he talked to the barista. But I saw him. I'd never forget that face. Those familiar eyes, the same way his eyebrows furrowed when he was concentrating. He looked older now, more worn, more tired. But beneath it all, there was something about him that made my chest tighten with both resentment and longing. I hesitated. My instinct was to get up and walk out, to leave him to whatever mission he had in mind, just as I'd left him behind all those years ago. But before I could make a move, he turned around and saw me. His face softened immediately, his expression a mixture of surprise and hope. "Jess," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't expect to see you here." I stood frozen for a moment. The last time I'd seen him had been at the beach house, right before I had shut the door in his face. The hurt I'd felt in that moment was still fresh, still raw. "I didn't expect to see you either," I replied, my voice colder than I intended. Tyler walked over to my table slowly, carefully, like he wasn't sure whether to sit down or turn and leave. He pulled out the chair across from me, waiting for me to either invite him to stay or push him away. "Look," he began, "I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you. I don't. But I'm here, and I want to apologize. For everything. For the way we treated you. For the way we just assumed you'd be okay without us." His words were raw, genuine, and for a moment, I almost believed him. The apology was long overdue, but it still didn't erase the years of neglect, the years of silence. "I don't want your apologies, Tyler," I said, my voice tight with restraint. "I don't want to be the person you come to for redemption. I'm not your savior, and I'm not looking to be part of the family circus again." He flinched, but didn't look away. "I don't expect you to forgive me just like that. I know it's not that simple, but I'm asking for a chance. Just one chance to prove that I'm not the same person I was back then." I wanted to shut him down. I wanted to tell him to leave and never come back. But something in his eyes made me pause. There was no anger in them anymore, no resentment. Just regret. And something else, guilt. The guilt that had been weighing him down, the guilt that had probably driven him to reach out in the first place. "Why now?" I asked, almost too quietly. "Why all of a sudden after all these years? Why do you care now?" Tyler looked away, like he was searching for the right words. When he spoke, it wasn't with the confidence I remembered, but with a vulnerability I'd never seen from him before. "I've been trying to make things right with everyone," he admitted. "But I can't do it without you. I can't pretend like everything's okay without you in the picture. And I don't want to live the rest of my life knowing that I could have done more, could have been more, when I had the chance." I didn't know how to respond to that. For the first time in years, Tyler had spoken from the heart, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear it. But maybe that was the point. Maybe I needed to hear it. Because in that moment, I realized that I wasn't the only one carrying the weight of the past. We all were. But was it enough to make me forgive him? Was it enough to make me want to rebuild the family we'd lost? I didn't know. I wasn't sure if I ever would. But as I looked at him, I understood that maybe, just maybe, we both needed time to figure it out. "I don't have the answers, Tyler," I said finally. "But I'll think about it. Just like I told Jenna." Tyler nodded slowly, a small, tentative smile pulling at the corner of his lips. "That's all I'm asking for." And with that, he stood up and walked out of the cafe, leaving me alone with my thoughts once again. It had been a week since I'd met with Tyler. The awkwardness of that conversation still lingered, hanging in the air like an unresolved question. I didn't know what I expected from him, but I certainly didn't expect the quiet sincerity he had shown. It wasn't easy for me to admit, but part of me had hoped he would show up and act like nothing had happened, like everything could just pick up where it left off. But he hadn't done that. Instead, he had shown up vulnerable, something I hadn't seen in years. That vulnerability left me with a strange sense of discomfort. I wasn't used to seeing Tyler like this. I wasn't used to seeing anyone from my family like this. It felt unsettling, but I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't just shut it out like I had done for so many years. The truth was, as much as I wanted to stay angry, I couldn't deny the pull of the past. The memories of family dinners, laughter by the fireplace, the feeling of belonging, it all haunted me. And it wasn't just the memories of my mother. It was the shared history, the shared life that once existed, now reduced to nothing but remnants of what we used to be. I stared out the window at the beach, the waves crashing in rhythm as they always had. There was a sense of peace here, but it felt like a peace I couldn't quite touch. I had the house. I had everything I had worked for. But I felt empty. My mind kept going back to the same question. What was it all for? That night, after another restless day spent on the beach, I found myself back at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone. I had been avoiding checking my messages, but I couldn't ignore them any longer. It was as if they were calling to me, demanding my attention. The first message was from Jenna. "Are you okay? I've been thinking a lot about our talk the other day. Let me know if you want to meet up again soon. We can talk more. I'm here for you." Her words were kind, but they also reminded me of everything I had been avoiding. Was I really ready to dive back into this mess of family dynamics? Was I prepared to put myself out there again, only to be let down once more? The second message was from Tyler. Again. "I know I'm pushing, but I'm serious about trying to fix things. Let's meet. I don't want to lose you, Jess." My thumb hovered over the screen, torn between responding or throwing the phone across the room. I didn't know what I wanted. The anger I felt was still there, simmering just beneath the surface. I wanted to hold on to it. I wanted to use it as armor to keep everyone at a distance. But a part of me knew that I couldn't keep running from this forever. I put my phone down and exhaled, rubbing my eyes. I was tired, physically, emotionally, mentally. I hadn't realized just how exhausting it was to carry all the weight of the past by myself. That was when I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this festering mess sit any longer. I wasn't going to let my family's mistakes define me. But if I was going to move forward, I had to confront the reality of what had happened. I couldn't pretend that I didn't care anymore. And I couldn't just walk away. I needed to go to them. I needed to face them. But first, I needed to figure out what I really wanted. I stood up and walked out of the kitchen, heading toward the guest bedroom where I kept my mom's old journals. For some reason, the quiet of her words always gave me the clarity I needed. I hadn't looked at them in years, but now they felt like the key to unlocking the answers I was searching for. As I flipped through the pages, reading her words on family, on love, on forgiveness, I couldn't help but feel the weight of her absence. She had written about family reunions, about how the house had been a place where everyone came together, a safe haven for the broken and the lost. But now it was just an empty shell, at least, that's how it felt to me. I came to a passage that struck me deeply. It was one of the last things she had written before her death. Family is not just a group of people we are bound to by blood. It is the people who show up when you need them most, the ones who stay even when things fall apart. We may not be perfect, but we are still family. And family at its core is about showing up, even when it hurts. I read it over and over again, each time feeling the weight of the truth settle deeper into my chest. Maybe I had been wrong all these years. Maybe family wasn't about perfection. Maybe it was about trying. It was about showing up, even when you weren't sure how it would turn out. Even when it hurt. The words felt like a challenge. A challenge to everything I had been holding on to, the anger, the resentment, the wall I had built around myself. Could I really show up? Could I open myself up to them again, knowing full well that they might hurt me once more? The answer wasn't easy, but I knew it was time. I had to at least try. The next morning, I called Jenna. "I think it's time," I said, my voice steady. "I'm ready to talk. But I need you to promise me something." "Anything," she replied, her voice soft with relief. "I need you to make sure they're all there. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it all the way." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Jenna's voice broke through. "I promise. We'll all be there. It's time to fix this, Jess." I hung up the phone and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision settle over me. This wasn't going to be easy. But maybe it was time to let go of the past and give them, and myself, a chance at something better. As I walked back toward the beach house, the sun rising over the horizon, I felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. The day of the family reunion came faster than I expected. I had spent the last few days pacing around the beach house, contemplating what I was about to do. Was I ready to face them? To walk into that house full of people who had once been my family and open myself to whatever came next? The anxiety twisted in my stomach like a knot I couldn't untangle. Every inch of me wanted to turn back, to call Jenna and cancel, to pretend that everything was fine just the way it was. But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep running. It wasn't just about them. It was about me. If I wanted to move on with my life, I had to confront the ghosts of the past. I had to face the people who had shaped me, for better or worse, and allow myself to feel whatever emotions came with it. So, I drove to the beach house. The house that had been my refuge, my sanctuary, the one place that still held the echoes of my mother's laughter. It had been my safe space, but now it felt like the center of everything I had to confront. It wasn't just a building to me anymore. It was a symbol of loss, of pain, but also of opportunity. Maybe, just maybe, it could be a place of healing. When I arrived, the house was already buzzing with activity. Cars lined the driveway, and voices echoed from inside. I felt my pulse quicken. For a moment, I stood frozen at the doorstep, staring at the familiar front door that had once been the gateway to my life, a life that no longer felt like my own. Jenna was the first to spot me. She came running toward me, her face bright with excitement, but there was also an edge of nervousness beneath her smile. "You made it," she said, her voice a little too loud, too eager. "I'm so glad you came. Everyone's been waiting for you." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I was grateful she was here, but the weight of everyone's expectations felt heavy. As I stepped over the threshold, a flood of memories rushed through me, laughing with my mom at the kitchen table, fighting with my sister over who got the bigger room, playing hide and seek in the backyard. It all felt so distant, so foreign, as if I were an outsider in my own life. The house had been meticulously prepared for the gathering. The long dining table was adorned with fresh flowers, and the smell of home-cooked food wafted through the air. But beneath the cheerful atmosphere, there was an unmistakable tension. I could feel it in the way people glanced at me, in the way they hesitated to speak when I entered the room. I knew I wasn't just walking into a family reunion. I was stepping into a minefield of unspoken words, unresolved issues, and fractured relationships. "Hey, Jess," Tyler called from across the room, his voice tentative. He was standing next to my father, who was trying and failing to look nonchalant, but was clearly just as nervous as everyone else. I forced a smile, nodding toward them. I couldn't deny that seeing Tyler again stirred something deep within me. It wasn't just the years of hurt and confusion that came with his absence. It was the fact that, in this moment, we were both strangers trying to navigate a relationship that had been broken for far too long. "Hey," I said softly, taking a step forward. "How's everything?" Tyler's smile was small but sincere. "We're trying to make things right," he said, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "One step at a time." I wasn't sure how to respond. The words felt hollow, like we were both pretending to be something we weren't. We weren't the family we used to be, and no amount of pleasantries would change that. My father, who had been silent until now, stepped closer. His presence, like always, was overwhelming. He had the kind of authority that made people feel small, even without saying a word. But today, there was no harshness in his posture. No command in his voice. He looked almost human. "Jess," he said, his voice softer than I expected. "It's good to see you." I wasn't sure how to respond to that either. My father had been the one to push me away the hardest, the one who had told me I wasn't part of the family anymore after my mom died. I had spent so many years resenting him for that, resenting him for being a stranger in my life. But now, seeing him stand there, looking so vulnerable, I couldn't find it in me to stay angry. I didn't know what to expect when I walked in here, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure if I was making a huge mistake coming back. "No mistake," my father said, looking down at the floor for a moment before meeting my gaze again. This was always going to happen. We just didn't know when." I blinked, surprised by his honesty. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As the rest of the family trickled in, the room filled with awkward smiles and forced small talk. I did my best to remain composed, but I could feel the eyes on me, the curiosity, the judgment, the expectation. It was like walking into a courtroom where everyone already had their verdict. No one knew what to say to me, and honestly, I didn't know what to say to them. After a while, we all sat down for dinner, the tension palpable as everyone took their seats. The conversation was light at first, the usual small talk that comes with these kinds of gatherings. But it didn't take long for the underlying issues to surface. "Jess," my Aunt Karen said, her voice a little too chipper, "we're so glad you're here. You know, we've missed you. We were all talking the other day, and we realized that we haven't been the same without you. It's been too long." Her words were kind, but they stung. The distance between us was undeniable, and no amount of pleasantries would erase the years of neglect. "I've missed you too," I replied, my voice steady despite the heaviness in my chest. "But things have changed, and we can't just go back to the way things were." The table fell silent for a moment. No one had expected me to say that. But the truth was, things couldn't go back. Not now. Not without addressing everything that had happened. "Maybe not," Jenna said, breaking the silence. She reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "But we can move forward. Together. If you're willing." I looked around the room, at the faces of the people who had once been my family. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the smallest glimmer of hope. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick. But maybe, just maybe, we could start rebuilding something from the rubble. "All right," I said, my voice steady but full of uncertainty. "I'll give this a shot. But it's going to take time. We all have a lot of work to do." And as I looked around the table, I could see it. The smallest flicker of understanding, the faintest trace of relief. We were all standing on the edge of something fragile, something that could either crumble or grow into something new. The days following the reunion passed in a haze of awkwardness and tentative progress. For the first time in years, I was back in the fold, sort of. It wasn't easy. Each interaction felt like walking on eggshells, every word carefully chosen, every gesture scrutinized. But as much as it bothered me to admit, there was something about the act of showing up, of sitting at that table with them, that felt right. Not perfect, not yet, but right. At least, that was until the cracks began to show. The morning after the reunion, I was in the kitchen, brewing my coffee and trying to push the fog from my mind. I'd stayed up late the night before, replaying every conversation, every gesture, wondering if I had said the wrong thing, if I had given too much, or if I had been too cold. It was exhausting. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking beneath the surface, waiting to erupt. Tyler had texted me the night before. It was a short message, simple, almost too casual. Hey, we should talk. About everything. Are you free tomorrow? I hadn't responded. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure how. I wasn't sure I was ready to go there yet. As I stirred my coffee, a loud knock on the door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I certainly didn't want to see anyone right now. But before I could think better of it, I found myself walking toward the door. Tyler stood on the other side, his expression unreadable, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jacket. He didn't look like the man I remembered. He had grown up, matured, his shoulders broader, his face less boyish, more serious. But there was still that same vulnerability in his eyes, that same weight he carried. Hey, I said, surprised by how stiff and formal my voice sounded. What's up? I wanted to talk, Tyler said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. It wasn't rude. It was just, like he expected this. Like he expected to be here. I watched him for a moment, unsure of how to proceed. Part of me wanted to shut him out, to send him away before this conversation even started. But another part of me knew that if we were going to make any progress at all, we had to talk. All right, I said, setting my coffee mug down on the counter. Let's talk. Tyler paced for a moment, running his hand through his hair before speaking. I know things have been messed up between us. Between all of us. But I'm serious, Jess. I want to fix this. I know I haven't done a good job of showing it, but I don't want you to feel like you don't belong. You're part of this family. You always have been. His words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to believe him, really, I did. But there was a part of me that recoiled, the old anger flaring up. How could he say that? How could he say I was still part of the family when they had all pushed me away for so long? You think it's that simple? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. You think you can just show up after all these years and tell me it's all okay? Tyler's eyes darkened with frustration, but he didn't back down. I know it's not simple, but nothing worth having ever is, Jess. We've all made mistakes, and I'm the first to admit it. I should have been there for you more. I should have fought harder to make things right after everything happened. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat threatening to choke me. I didn't want to cry. Not now. Not in front of him. But I could feel the emotions bubbling up, threatening to overflow. You weren't the only one who wasn't there, Tyler, I whispered, the words coming out in a rush. You weren't the only one who stayed away. I wasn't there either. I shut myself off from all of you. I built walls. I told myself it was easier that way. But it wasn't easier. It was just lonely. He took a step closer, his expression softening, but the tension between us was thick. We've both been holding onto the wrong things, Jess. We've both been angry and hurt, but I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to keep pretending we're strangers. I felt a pang in my chest, a mixture of hope and fear, of wanting to believe him and being afraid to. I had spent so many years closing myself off, convincing myself that I didn't need them, that I didn't need anyone. But now, standing here, I could feel the weight of the connection we had once shared, the bond that had been severed but never truly gone. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice breaking. I don't know if I can forgive any of you for what happened. For abandoning me. For letting me believe I didn't matter. But maybe I could try. Maybe we can try. Tyler's face softened as he reached out, his hand hesitating in the air between us before he slowly placed it on my shoulder. You don't have to forgive me right now. But I'm here. We're all here. And we're going to take this one step at a time. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in years, and for the first time, I saw the sincerity in his eyes. He wasn't the boy I once knew. He wasn't the one who had left me behind all those years ago. He was something different now, someone different. Okay, I whispered, my voice raw with emotion. We'll take it one step at a time. But just as the words left my mouth, the front door swung open and a familiar face stepped inside. It was my father. I didn't know how to feel about him showing up unannounced, especially after our tense interactions at the reunion. But there he was, his tall frame casting a shadow over the room. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, I saw the vulnerability there, the same vulnerability Tyler had shown me. I didn't want to interrupt, my father said, his voice softer than usual. But I think we all need to talk. Together. The air in the room seemed to thicken, and the old wounds I had tried to keep buried began to crack open once again. It wasn't just about Tyler anymore. It was about all of us. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was about to come. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The room felt heavier after my father's entrance, as if the air itself had thickened with the weight of everything left unsaid. There we stood, Tyler, me, and my father, three people bound by years of pain, silence, and unspoken resentments. I wasn't sure how to move forward from here, or if I even wanted to. This was supposed to be a moment of reconciliation, but instead, it felt like we were standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down at the past we'd all tried so desperately to avoid. My father was the first to break the silence, his voice low and hesitant, a stark contrast to the commanding tone he'd always used. I know I've made mistakes, he said, his words measured, like he was choosing each one carefully. A lot of mistakes. And I know I've hurt you, Jess. I know I pushed you away after your mother passed, and I regret that more than you could ever know. I didn't know how to react to that. For years, I had blamed him for everything. His coldness, his distance, the way he abandoned me when I needed him the most. But hearing him admit it, hearing him say the words out loud, was jarring. It was like I had spent so much time holding onto my anger that I didn't know how to let it go. I don't know how to fix what I've done, my father continued, looking at me with eyes that seemed unfamiliar, almost as if he were a stranger. But I want to try. I want to be here for you now, Jess. I should have been there for you all these years, and I'm sorry I wasn't. Tyler stood off to the side, his arms crossed over his chest, watching the exchange with a quiet intensity. I could tell that the words weren't just for me, they were for him too. For all of us. We had all been caught in the same web of hurt, but none of us had known how to escape it. I don't know if I can forgive you right now, I said finally, my voice tight with emotion. But I'll try. I want to try. But it's going to take time. The words hung in the air, heavy and raw. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I was speaking to him or to myself. Could I forgive him? Could I forgive them all? The truth was, I wasn't sure. But standing here in this house that had always been the heart of our family, I realized that maybe I didn't need to have all the answers right now. Maybe what mattered most was that I was willing to try. Tyler took a step forward, breaking the tension with his usual quiet strength. I think we all need time, he said. I know I haven't been the best brother, and I failed you, Jess. I don't expect you to just forget that. But I want to do better. I want to help rebuild what we lost. I looked at him then, really looked at him. I saw the sincerity in his eyes, the same sincerity that I had once believed in so blindly. But this time, it didn't feel like he was just saying the words to make things right. He was speaking from a place of genuine regret, from a place where he wanted to fix what had been broken. I'm willing to try too, I said softly. I don't know what that looks like, but I'll try. My father gave a small nod, as though he'd been waiting for this moment, for me to finally acknowledge his apology. That's all I'm asking for, he said quietly. We all stood in the living room, the three of us, caught in a moment that felt both fragile and monumental. This wasn't some grand moment of catharsis, it wasn't some perfect picture of reconciliation. But it was a beginning. And maybe that was all we could ask for. After a few moments, Tyler broke the silence again, his voice a little more casual this time. So, what's next? He asked. Are we going to sit around and keep talking about the past, or are we going to start figuring out what comes next? It was an unexpected question, but it broke the tension. I couldn't help but laugh a little, a dry, nervous laugh. I don't know, Ty. I guess we just take it one step at a time. We'll figure it out, my father said, sounding more resolute than I had ever heard him before. But the most important thing is that we're all here. Together. And we're going to work through this. No more avoiding the hard stuff. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure what working through this would look like. But there was something in my father's words that gave me a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the start of something new, not a perfect family, but a family that could rebuild from the ashes of the past. The next few hours were a blur of conversation, awkward moments, and tentative steps toward reconciliation. We sat down together at the dining table, sharing a meal that, though delicious, felt almost surreal. It was strange how quickly the room had gone from tense and stilted to somewhat comfortable, as though we were relearning how to be a family. As we ate, the conversation shifted. We started talking about simpler things: the beach, the weather, the house, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to feel the warmth of being surrounded by people who were, in some strange way, still my family. We weren't healed yet, not by a long shot. But maybe we could be. Maybe we would get there. By the time dinner was over, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light through the windows. The waves crashed gently against the shore, the sound familiar and soothing. It felt like a moment of peace, a moment where, for once, we didn't have to focus on the past. "Let's take a walk," Tyler suggested, standing up from the table. "The beach is beautiful at sunset." I nodded, rising from my seat as well. We all went outside together, my father walking at the front, Tyler and I trailing behind. There was something comforting about the rhythm of our footsteps in the sand, the way the salty air mixed with the sound of our voices. It felt, in some way, like we were beginning to rewrite our story. Not as a family that had fallen apart, but as a family that was learning to stand together again. We didn't say much during that walk. There was no need for more words. For now, the silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was just a quiet acknowledgement of what we had all been through and what we could still become. As we reached the end of the beach, I looked at my father and brother, standing side by side, and for the first time in years, I felt something that resembled hope. Maybe it wasn't about forgetting the past, but learning how to live with it. Maybe that was what true healing looked like. The days that followed felt like a strange kind of limbo, somewhere between old wounds and new beginnings. The initial awkwardness from our conversation had started to ease, but that didn't mean everything was perfect. I still carried the weight of our past with me, the unresolved tension that lingered just beneath the surface. I could feel it in the way my father would glance at me when he thought I wasn't looking, or the way Tyler's laughter seemed just a little too loud, as if trying to cover up the cracks. But for the first time in years, I allowed myself to entertain the possibility that things could get better. It wasn't easy. It never was. But we were trying, and that was something. The sun had barely risen when I found myself standing on the porch, coffee cup in hand, staring out at the waves crashing against the shore. The air was crisp, the salt of the sea mixing with the scent of morning dew. It was peaceful in a way. Almost like I could forget everything that had happened before and just be. But that wasn't the reality, was it? The reality was that we had so much to fix, so much to say, and so many years of silence to break through. I wasn't sure how to start, or if we even could. But what I did know was that this place, the beach house, the one I had inherited after my mother's passing, wasn't just a physical space. It was a symbol. A reminder of everything we had lost, and everything we still had the chance to gain. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Tyler stepped up beside me, his own coffee in hand, his gaze directed out at the horizon. "You look like you're a million miles away," he said, his voice soft. It was the same voice I remembered from years ago, calm, reassuring, like he was trying to create a sense of normalcy between us again. I gave a small smile, though it felt tight. "Just thinking." "About what?" he asked, taking a sip from his cup. I hesitated, my gaze still fixed on the sea. It felt like the right moment to speak, but the words seemed stuck in my throat. About everything, I guess. About how we got here. About what happens next. Tyler let out a long breath, as if the weight of those same questions had been on his mind too. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About the mistakes I've made. About how I could have been a better brother, a better son. I turned to look at him, his profile framed by the early morning light. There was sincerity in his words, but also something else, something deeper. Something that felt like regret, but also a desire to do better. You can't undo the past, Ty, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. None of us can. But maybe we can try to make things better now. Not just for us, but for Dad, too. He nodded slowly, his eyes shifting toward the house where our father had just come outside, standing at the door, watching us. For a moment, we both stood in silence, unsure of what to say next. Then Tyler sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. You know, I've been thinking about this place. The house, I mean. I raised an eyebrow. What about it? He paused, taking another sip of his coffee, and then looked at me, his expression serious. I've been thinking that maybe we should all pitch in. Help you take care of it. You don't have to carry all of this on your own, Jess. I blinked, surprised by his words. Pitch in. I repeated, trying to process what he was saying. What do you mean? Tyler took a step closer, his voice low. This house isn't just a reminder of what we've lost. It's a chance to build something new. A chance for us to start over. But we can't do that if we're still holding onto the past, if we're still stuck in old patterns. Maybe it's time for all of us to really invest in it. Not just financially, but emotionally. Maybe if we take care of this place together, we'll be able to rebuild ourselves too. I stared at him for a moment, his words sinking in. It was such an unexpected offer, one that I hadn't anticipated. The beach house had always been a place of pain for me, a place where so many memories lingered, but Tyler's words made me realize something. This house was still a part of us, a part of our history, and maybe it could be a part of our future too. I never expected you to say that, I said, my voice soft with disbelief. Tyler smiled, his gaze steady. I know. I don't think I expected it either. But I've been thinking a lot about what it means to really be a family. And I think this place could help us find that. We don't have to erase the past, Jess. But maybe we can make new memories. Maybe we can start fresh. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Tyler was right. Maybe this house could be more than just a reminder of what had been lost. Maybe it could be a place of healing, of growth. Maybe it could be the foundation of the family we were trying to rebuild. Before I could respond, our father joined us on the porch, his expression unreadable. He looked between us, and for a moment, I thought he might say something to interrupt the moment. But instead, he just nodded and said, I think Tyler's got the right idea. This place can be a fresh start for all of us. I looked at both of them, the men who had been such a huge part of my life, both the sources of my pain and, in this moment, the sources of my hope. I didn't have all the answers, and I didn't know what the future would hold. But I knew one thing, we had a long road ahead, and we would have to take it together. As the sun began to rise higher in the sky, casting a golden light across the beach, I felt a sense of peace settle in my chest. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy. But we were trying. And maybe that was enough. The following week passed in a blur. The tension that had once gripped the house began to ease. The conversations felt more natural, the silences more comfortable. My father, Tyler, and I spent more time together, not always talking about the past, but simply enjoying each other's company. It was like we were beginning to rediscover the small, everyday moments that used to bind us together. Shared meals, long walks on the beach, watching sunsets as if nothing had ever gone wrong. But beneath the surface of this fragile peace, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that it wouldn't last. We had only just begun the delicate process of healing, and even though I was hopeful, I knew better than to believe everything was fixed so easily. Our history wasn't something that could be swept under the rug. It was too heavy, too complicated. It wasn't until the end of the week that the first real test of our newfound bond arrived, and it came when I least expected it. We had just finished dinner, and the three of us were sitting in the living room. My father, looking more relaxed than I had ever seen him, was reading a book. Tyler and I were lounging on the couch, chatting about trivial things. For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were, well, just a family. It felt normal. It felt right. And then the phone rang. The sound of it shattered the calm that had settled over the house. My father's eyes flickered to the screen, and I could see his face tighten. It was a call from his lawyer. He had been dealing with some business matters back home, and I could tell by his reaction that it was something important. Something he didn't want to share with us yet. I watched as he hesitated before answering, his fingers hovering over the phone. Tyler seemed to sense the shift in the room and sat up straighter, his eyes narrowed, waiting for my father's next move. "Hello," my father said, his voice clipped. There was a long pause. "Yes, I see. Keep me updated." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll deal with it tomorrow." When he hung up, the room fell into a tense silence. It was clear that something had changed, though none of us knew exactly what. I exchanged a look with Tyler, who raised an eyebrow. My father seemed distracted now, distant. "What happened?" I asked, my curiosity getting the best of me. My father sighed and rubbed his temples. "There's an issue with the property back home. I've been dealing with it for a while, but now it's escalating. I may need to head back sooner than I planned." Tyler and I both froze, the air growing heavy with the unsaid words. I felt a tightness in my chest. "Are you leaving?" I asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. "I'm not sure yet," my father replied, his tone weary. "But I may have to. This is a legal matter, and it could affect the entire family. I have to handle it." My mind raced. Part of me wanted to ask more questions, to press him for answers, but I held back. This wasn't the time to dig into old wounds. We had just begun to repair our relationship, and I didn't want to risk pushing him away again. But still, the thought of him leaving, after everything we had just started to rebuild, felt like a blow to the fragile peace we'd created. Tyler seemed to sense my unease. He stood up and clapped my father on the back in a gesture of comfort. "Don't worry, Dad. We'll figure it out. We've got this. Whatever you need, we'll handle it here." I nodded, but a small knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. Tyler's words were kind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The situation felt too sudden. Why hadn't my father mentioned it earlier? And what was really going on with the property? My father gave a small, grateful smile. "Thanks, son. But I'll let you know if I need to leave. I just need to think about it for a bit." As he stood up and retreated to his room, Tyler and I exchanged a silent glance. I could feel the weight of the unspoken questions hanging between us. "I don't like this," I said quietly after a moment. "I know," Tyler replied, his voice low. "Something's off. He's not telling us everything." I bit my lip, my mind spinning with possibilities. The timing of it all felt too convenient, too sudden. Just as we were beginning to find a sense of normalcy, something came along to threaten it. Was this really just a business issue, or was there something more to it? Could it be that my father was hiding something from us again? "I'm going to find out," I said, my voice resolute. Tyler turned to me with a surprised look. "What do you mean?" "I'm going to go down to the lawyer's office tomorrow," I said, determination rising in my chest. "I'm going to figure out exactly what's going on with this property. If there's more to the story than he's telling us, I want to know." Tyler hesitated for a moment, his eyes searching mine. "Are you sure about this?" "I don't trust that he's being completely honest with us," I said, my voice steady despite the unease in my stomach. "I need to know what's really going on. I can't just sit here and wait for him to tell us when he's ready." Tyler nodded slowly, his expression softening. "All right, but be careful, Jess. I know this is important, but you don't want to push him too far." I knew he was right. The last thing I wanted was to push my father away again. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than he was letting on. I had to find out the truth, even if it meant confronting him in a way I wasn't ready for. As I lay in bed that night, the quiet hum of the ocean outside my window, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held for us. We had come so far, but now it felt like we were standing on the edge of something we didn't fully understand. The next steps we took, how we navigated this new chapter in our lives, would determine everything. And right now, I wasn't sure where that path would lead. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy sense of purpose, but also a knot in my stomach. The calmness of the beach, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, and the faint scent of salt water, everything that usually calmed my nerves now felt distant, almost unreachable. I couldn't stop thinking about the phone call my father had received the night before. The way his demeanor had shifted so quickly, how he'd been so vague about the details. There was something he wasn't telling us. I needed to know what it was. I dressed quickly, grabbed my purse, and made a decision I would go to the lawyer's office. There was no other option. Tyler's warning echoed in my mind, but my determination overpowered the voice of caution. After all, if we were going to move forward as a family, we needed the whole truth. No more half-stories, no more secrets. As I drove down the winding coastal road toward the lawyer's office, the landscape blurred in my peripheral vision. My focus was razor-sharp. I replayed the events of the last few days over and over in my mind, trying to figure out what I was missing. What had changed so suddenly that my father would need to leave again? What was he trying to protect, and why had he waited until the last minute to bring it up? The office was nestled between a coffee shop and a boutique, tucked away in a small strip mall. It looked unassuming, but I knew from the way my father had spoken that it was crucial to everything he was dealing with. The glass doors slid open with a soft jingle as I entered, and the cool, air-conditioned air hit my face, offering a brief reprieve from the heat outside. A receptionist greeted me with a warm smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'm here to see Mr. Harris," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's about a property issue." She looked at me curiously but didn't ask further questions. "I'll let him know you're here. Just have a seat, please." I nodded and sat down, tapping my fingers nervously on my lap. The waiting area was quiet, with soft instrumental music playing in the background and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. But my mind was elsewhere, on my father, on the beach house, on the mystery that seemed to have just deepened overnight. Minutes later, a man in his mid-50s appeared at the door, his sharp suit and polished shoes signaling that he was someone of importance. He had a no-nonsense air about him, his eyes immediately scanning the room and landing on me. "Ms. Crawford?" he asked, his voice deep and authoritative. "Yes," I replied, standing up. "I need to talk to you about my father's property, about what's going on with it." He nodded and gestured toward his office. "Please, come in. Let's talk." As I followed him into the office, I couldn't help but notice the professionalism, the way everything was organized with precision, documents stacked neatly, a large bookshelf filled with legal texts, and a large desk where he sat. I sat across from him, my heart racing as I gathered the courage to ask the questions that had been swirling in my mind. "I'm sure you know who I am," I began, trying to maintain control of the conversation. "My father has been dealing with some legal matters concerning a property back home, and I need to know what's really going on. Why hasn't he told us the full story?" Mr. Harris adjusted his glasses, his gaze flicking to the stack of papers on his desk before meeting my eyes. "I understand your concern, Ms. Crawford. Your father has asked me to handle certain sensitive aspects of this case on his behalf, but I assure you, there's nothing nefarious happening here." "Then why is he being so secretive?" I pressed, my frustration rising. Why did he avoid telling us the truth about the situation until the last minute? He paused, his fingers drumming lightly on the desk, a telltale sign that he was considering his next words carefully. There are matters of family and business that, at times, need to be dealt with privately. Your father has his reasons for handling this situation the way he has. It's not uncommon for people to protect their loved ones from stress during difficult times. I felt my temper flare, but I forced myself to remain calm. I'm his daughter. I have the right to know what's happening with his affairs, especially when it affects the rest of the family. This property, it's not just any property, Mr. Harris. It's the beach house. It's my mother's legacy. It means something to us. His face softened, but there was still a guarded look in his eyes. I understand. And I'll be candid with you, Ms. Crawford. There's a situation with the house that your father is trying to resolve, but it's complicated. There are some financial challenges with the property that your father has been working on for a while. He didn't want to burden you with it, especially given the circumstances. I leaned forward, trying to understand. What kind of financial challenges? Mr. Harris sighed, opening a drawer and pulling out a few documents. He slid them across the desk toward me. These are the details of the property's current standing. It's facing some legal disputes involving the title. There are competing claims to the land. It's been in litigation for years, but your father has been trying to keep it quiet, hoping to resolve it without involving the family. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. This was bigger than I thought. The beach house, my mother's most cherished gift to our family, was being threatened. Someone else was trying to claim it? You're saying someone else is trying to take the beach house from us? My voice cracked as the weight of the situation hit me. It's not that simple, he said carefully. There's a competing claim by a distant relative. It's based on an old deed from decades ago. Your father has been in talks with the other party, trying to negotiate a settlement. I sat back in my chair, stunned. The beach house had always been our sanctuary, a place that felt untouchable. Now, I was hearing that it was at risk of being lost to some distant relative we hadn't even known about. Why didn't he tell us? I whispered, my mind reeling. Mr. Harris's expression softened, but he didn't offer an immediate answer. Sometimes, people try to shield their families from hard truths until they have a clearer picture. Your father didn't want to bring unnecessary worry to you and your brother. I didn't know how to respond. The thought of losing the beach house was almost too much to bear. But now that I knew the truth, I understood why my father had been acting so strangely. I stood up, my mind made up. Thank you for your time, Mr. Harris. But I have to go now. He nodded, and I could see the understanding in his eyes. As I walked out of the office, the weight of the revelation pressed down on me. The truth had come out, but it was more complicated than I ever imagined. There was no turning back now. I left Mr. Harris's office in a daze, my mind spinning with the gravity of what I had just learned. The beach house wasn't just a memory, it was now a battleground, one that my father had been silently fighting on his own. I felt a mix of disbelief and anger boiling inside me. How could he keep this from us? We had been so close to mending the rift in our family, and now it felt like we were back at square one. I couldn't help but feel betrayed, as if the very foundation of what we had been rebuilding was now shaking under the weight of this revelation. The beach house was more than a house, it was our family's legacy. And now someone else, some distant relative we didn't even know, was trying to take it from us. I took a long, shaky breath as I drove back to the beach house. The ocean stretched out before me, its vastness a reminder of the storm I felt brewing within. As the familiar view of the beach house came into sight, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. It was supposed to be our sanctuary, a place where memories were made, where we could find peace. But now it felt tainted, like the walls were closing in on me. When I walked through the door, I was greeted by the sound of laughter. Tyler and my father were talking in the living room, seemingly at ease. For a moment, I considered just turning around and walking out. I wasn't ready for this conversation. I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready for it, but I couldn't avoid it any longer. My father deserved to know that I knew the truth. We couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I found my father sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine, his relaxed demeanor belying the tension that had begun to simmer in my chest. Tyler was pacing in front of the windows, talking animatedly about his plans for the next few days. They both looked up as I entered, and I could feel the shift in the air the moment they saw my face. "Hey, sis," Tyler said with a smile. But when he saw the expression on my face, his smile faltered. "What's wrong?" I glanced at my father, who was watching me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. He must have sensed something was off. I took a deep breath before speaking, my voice steady but thick with emotion. "I know about the property," I said quietly. Tyler froze, his eyes widening. My father's face immediately hardened, his expression unreadable. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence felt suffocating, like the air had thickened between us. "What do you mean, Jess?" my father asked, his voice low. "I went to see Mr. Harris this morning," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "He told me everything. About the legal issues with the beach house. About the competing claim." There it was, the truth out in the open. No more secrets, no more half-truths. My father's jaw tightened. He didn't look surprised, but he did look regretful. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said, his voice tinged with guilt. "But I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to burden you with all of this." I shook my head, feeling frustration rise in me. "Burden me? This is our family's home, Dad. You should have told us. We could have faced it together." Tyler stepped forward, his hand on my shoulder, trying to calm the rising tension. "Dad, why didn't you let us help? We could have figured this out." My father exhaled slowly, looking worn out. "I didn't want to drag you both into it. This has been a battle for years. The legal issues, the claims, it's complicated, and I didn't want you to feel responsible for something you couldn't control." "But we're family," I exclaimed. "It's our house. We're already involved, whether you wanted us to be or not. And now we have to deal with it, because you chose to keep us in the dark." The frustration in my voice was unmistakable, and I could see my father wince at the words. "I never meant to hurt you, Jess," he said softly. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I could handle it on my own, it would be over faster, and then we could go back to living our lives without all this mess." I could hear the sincerity in his voice, but it didn't take away the sting of betrayal. I wanted to believe that he had only been trying to protect us, but it didn't change the fact that he had kept us out of the loop when we should have been there with him from the start. "So, what happens now?" I asked, my voice steady but raw. "What are we going to do about the house? Are we going to let some stranger take it away from us?" "I'm not going to let that happen," my father said firmly, standing up from the couch. His usual calm demeanor had shifted to something more resolute. "I've been negotiating with the other party, trying to reach a settlement. But now that you know, I want you both to be a part of this. We're in this together." I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but it was tempered by the weight of everything that had happened. The damage had been done. Trust had been shaken. But maybe, just maybe, we could still salvage something. "How do we even begin to fix this?" Tyler asked, his voice quiet but hopeful. "Where do we start?" My father looked between us, his expression hardening. "We start by confronting the situation head-on. We get the best legal advice, we fight for the house, and we don't let anyone walk all over us. This is our family's home, and we'll protect it together." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in what felt like ages. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, and I knew there would be more obstacles to overcome. But at least we were facing them together, as a family. As my father spoke about the steps we would take next, I found myself thinking back to that first moment when I'd felt excluded, when I'd been left out of the family reunion. In some ways, that moment had changed everything, but in others, it had been the catalyst for the healing and the rebuilding that was happening now. The family I had almost lost was still here, and together, we would face whatever came next. The storm wasn't over yet, but maybe, just maybe, we could weather it. The days that followed my confrontation with my father felt like a strange kind of limbo. The air was thick with unspoken words, and every time I walked through the door, I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on all of us. Yet, there was a strange sense of unity forming. Tyler and I had spent the past few days going over the documents Mr. Harris had provided, trying to make sense of the competing claim and the legal ramifications. But no matter how many times I read them, the situation still felt overwhelming. Tyler, ever the optimist, kept encouraging me to stay focused. "We can do this, Jess. It's just a matter of getting the right team in place," he would say, always with that hopeful spark in his eyes. But I wasn't so sure. How could we fight against something as big as a legal dispute over property, especially when the other party had deep pockets and connections? The odds felt stacked against us. That afternoon, my father called a family meeting. He had been unusually quiet in the past few days, and I could tell that the weight of everything was starting to wear on him. Still, he was determined to keep moving forward, to fight for what was rightfully ours. As I walked into the living room, Tyler was already there, sitting next to my father on the couch. The space felt different today. There was no more tension between us, no more anger or resentment, just the determination to move forward. We were a team now, in this together. I took a seat across from them, my heart pounding as I awaited my father's words. His face was stern, but his eyes were softer, like he was trying to prepare himself for what was coming. "I know this hasn't been easy for any of us," my father began, his voice low but steady. "But now we need to focus. We can't afford to waste time. We need to take immediate action to protect the house, and I need both of you to be fully involved." Tyler and I exchanged a look, and I nodded, finally feeling the determination that had been lacking for so long. This was it. This was our chance to fight for everything we'd ever known. "We've been going over the documents," I said, leaning forward. "But what's the next step? How do we move forward with this?" My father sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We need to hire a top-notch attorney, one who specializes in real estate disputes. Mr. Harris has been handling things for us up to this point, but we need someone who can take this case to court if it comes to that." "I've been thinking about that," Tyler said, speaking up for the first time. "I know a few people in the legal field who might be able to help. One of my old college friends is a lawyer, and he's worked on some pretty high-profile cases. He might be able to steer us in the right direction." I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. That sounds promising. But how do we know we can trust him? "Trust is everything in this business," my father said firmly. "If we're going to get through this, we need to make sure we have the right people on our side. I'm not willing to let this beach house slip away from us." There was a fire in his eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. My father had always been the calm, methodical one, the one who kept his emotions in check. But now I could see that the fight for our home had reignited something in him, a fierce determination that matched my own. Tyler looked at me with a grin. "Looks like we've got a plan. Let's do this." I returned his smile, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in a while, I felt like we had a direction. We weren't just reacting to events anymore. We were actively making choices to protect what was ours. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls, research, and preparation. Tyler's friend, who turned out to be a well-established real estate attorney named Jordan, agreed to meet with us and discuss our options. He was sharp, confident, and didn't mince words. I could tell immediately that he was the kind of person we needed on our side. We met him at his office, a sleek and modern space overlooking the city skyline. Jordan wasted no time in diving into the details of our case. He reviewed the documents, then took a long, thoughtful pause before speaking. "This is going to be a tough fight," he said, looking up at us. "The competing claim is based on an old deed, and the legal precedent is murky. But I believe we can find a way to win this. It's not going to be easy, and it's certainly not going to be quick. But it's not impossible." I exhaled in relief, grateful for his straightforwardness. "So, what's our first step?" "We need to gather more evidence," Jordan explained. "We'll need to dig into the history of the property, track down any documents or records that might support your claim, and see if we can challenge the validity of the competing deed. This will require a lot of legwork, but I'm confident that with the right resources, we can make a strong case." I nodded, absorbing the weight of his words. This wasn't going to be a simple process, but at least now we had a clear path forward. As we left Jordan's office, my father seemed a little lighter. The uncertainty that had clouded his expression for so long had lifted, replaced by the focus and resolve of someone who was finally in control of their situation. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," he said as we walked out to the car. "But we can do this. Together." I looked at him, then at Tyler, and realized that, for the first time in a long while, I believed him. This battle was far from over, but we were no longer fighting it alone. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal jargon, research, and late nights. The battle for the beach house wasn't going to be an easy one. Jordan, our attorney, had dove into the historical records, scouring archives and tracing back every inch of the property's lineage. Each day brought new revelations, some of which gave us hope, and others that made my stomach tighten with anxiety. Tyler had taken the lead in dealing with most of the logistics. Coordinating meetings, organizing the documents, and tracking down witnesses. He seemed to thrive under the pressure, his energy never flagging. As much as I appreciated his enthusiasm, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. The other party, the distant relative who had staked their claim, wasn't just playing hardball. They were using every legal loophole to try and secure the beach house for themselves. I sat down at the kitchen table one evening, my head in my hands. I was exhausted. It was difficult to stay focused when I had the constant fear that, despite all our efforts, we might lose everything. The beach house wasn't just a house. It was the last piece of our family history, and I was determined to keep it. Tyler walked in, carrying a stack of papers in his hands. He was smiling, but there was something in his eyes that made me pause. "I think I've found something," he said, sitting down across from me. His voice had a note of excitement in it, but I could tell that he was trying to hide his concern. I sat up, wiping my hands across my face. "What did you find?" He placed the papers on the table. "We've been looking at the wrong angle." I went through some old correspondence that I found in the archives section of the courthouse, and it turns out there's a letter from Grandpa, well, our great-grandfather, really, that mentions the ownership of the property in a different way than we thought. I leaned forward, my heart racing. "What does it say?" Tyler's finger traced the yellowed edges of the letter as he spoke. "It's a letter to some distant cousin, talking about the ownership of the land and the family's intention to keep it in the family. The wording is vague, but there's something in here that could give us the edge we need. It shows that the deed the other party is using might not be valid, because there was a provision about direct inheritance from our great-grandfather to his children, no one else." I sat back in my chair, feeling a sense of cautious hope. "So, this letter could help prove that the other claim is false?" Tyler nodded, his eyes alight with excitement. "Exactly. If we can present this in court, it could seriously damage their case." I let out a slow breath. "But we need to find more evidence." "This is just one letter." "Yeah, but it's a start," Tyler said. "We've got to dig deeper, find more proof that shows how this property was supposed to stay in the family. Maybe there's more paperwork or letters like this one." I could feel the adrenaline kicking in. This was it. This was the break we needed. We spent the next few days combing through every possible lead, meeting with local historians, tracking down old neighbors, and digging into archives. It was a grind, but I could feel the momentum building. As much as I hated how this whole situation had come about, there was something deeply satisfying about taking control of it and fighting for our family. One afternoon, while going through a box of old photographs that my father had kept in the attic, I found something that stopped me in my tracks, a faded photo of my great-grandfather, standing in front of the beach house with a group of people. His face was stoic, but there was a sense of pride in his posture. I had seen this photo before, but something caught my eye now. On the back of it, there was a handwritten note in my great-grandfather's familiar scrawl, "For the family. Keep it safe, always." I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just a photo, it was a message. A final testament to what the beach house meant to him. And now it was up to us to honor that legacy. That evening, we met with Jordan again. I showed him the letter and the photo, both of which he took into careful consideration. "This is significant," he said, flipping through the photo. If we can authenticate these items and prove their connection to the property, it could be a game changer. The days that followed were a blur of activity as we worked to authenticate the photo and the letter. We hired an expert to verify the handwriting, and with a bit of luck and some careful research, we were able to trace the photo's origin back to my great-grandfather's personal collection. The breakthrough was enough to give us the confidence to approach the other party with a counteroffer. We weren't just going to roll over and let them take the house from us. We were prepared to fight legally, emotionally, and financially. I could see that my father had started to regain some of his old strength. The worry lines on his face had softened, and he even cracked a small smile when I showed him the letter and photo. "I think we've got them on the ropes," he said. They didn't count on us having this kind of evidence. As the days turned into weeks, the pressure was relentless. But with each new piece of evidence we uncovered, I felt a little more certain that we were on the right path. The other party might have had the legal resources, but we had something they didn't: our family's history, our bond, and a legacy we weren't willing to let go of. But just as we were starting to feel confident, a shadow began to loom over us. The other side wasn't backing down. And I could tell that things were about to get much more complicated. The days that followed our discovery of the old letter and photo seemed to blur together. On the surface, it appeared as though we were making progress, but underneath, the tension was building. The other party wasn't backing down. In fact, they had hired a much larger law firm, one that specialized in high-profile property disputes. The gloves were coming off. Tyler and I met with Jordan late one afternoon to go over the latest developments. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over his office, but there was no warmth in the room. The weight of the case was heavy on all of us. "We've got a problem," Jordan said, his voice low. He placed a thick stack of papers in front of us, the weight of them symbolic of the battle we were about to face. "The other side has filed for a temporary restraining order, preventing you from making any changes to the property. They're also demanding access to your records and documents." I felt a chill spread through me. A restraining order? They were trying to block us from taking any action with the beach house? That was a blow I hadn't seen coming. "Why would they do that?" I asked, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. "They're trying to tie us up in legal red tape," Jordan explained. "If they can slow us down, they can increase the pressure and wear us out. They're hoping that, with time, we'll fold and accept their offer." I slammed my fist against the table, my frustration bubbling over. "I'm not giving up. This beach house means too much to our family. It's not just property, it's our history." "I know, Jess," Tyler said quietly, his hand resting on mine for comfort. "We're not backing down. But we need to be prepared for a long, drawn-out fight." My father had been silent until now, his brow furrowed in thought. "We need to turn this around. If we let them control the pace of this, we'll lose." Jordan nodded. "That's exactly why we need to act quickly. We'll file a motion to dismiss the restraining order, but it's going to take time. Meanwhile, we should start looking for any additional weaknesses in their case." The words long, drawn-out fight hung in the air, like an unspoken cloud, and I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. We had always known that this wouldn't be easy, but I hadn't anticipated how far the other side would go to wear us down. After our meeting with Jordan, Tyler and I spent the night researching, looking for any loopholes or errors in the other party's legal filings. We couldn't let them gain the upper hand. But no matter how many hours we poured into the task, it felt like we were constantly running behind, always one step away from falling short. The next few days were a blur. We spent hours at the courthouse, filing motions and counterclaims, hoping that we could push back against the temporary restraining order. But things weren't going our way. Every step forward seemed to come with a new setback. The stress was starting to get to all of us. My father had grown more and more withdrawn, and even Tyler, who had always been our beacon of optimism, was starting to look worn out. One evening, as we gathered around the dinner table, my father finally broke his silence. "We need to consider all our options. This is getting expensive, and it's taking a toll on all of us. If we don't see some positive results soon, we may have to make some tough decisions. Tyler looked up at him, his expression unreadable. What do you mean, Dad? We may need to sell the beach house, my father said quietly, as if the words were foreign to him. It could give us the financial leverage we need to fight back. We can't let it slip away without a fight, but if we keep going at this pace, it could destroy us. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Sell the beach house? I couldn't even imagine it. The house had been in our family for generations. It was more than just a place, it was a symbol of everything we stood for. No, I said immediately, my voice firm. We can't sell it. We can't give up now. It's worth the fight. My father's eyes softened, but his expression was filled with concern. I don't want to lose it either, Jess. But I also don't want to see this family torn apart. We need to be realistic. Tyler spoke up, his voice calm but insistent. We're not giving up. Not yet. We need to think about what we really want to achieve here. Is it about the house? Or is it about standing up for our family's legacy? His words struck me like a lightning bolt. It wasn't just about the house. It was about who we were as a family, about the values that had been passed down through the generations. This house wasn't just a piece of real estate. It was the heart of our family, the place where memories had been made, where we had all come together. And no amount of legal maneuvering was going to change that. We fight for the legacy, I said, my voice stronger now. We fight for what this house represents. My father looked at me, his eyes filled with both pride and uncertainty. You're right, he said softly. We won't sell. We'll keep fighting. And so we did. We rallied together, focusing not just on the legal battle, but on what the beach house represented. Our family's history, our bond, and everything we had built together. The stakes were higher than ever. But one thing was certain. We weren't going to back down. The following weeks were filled with even more legal hurdles, but with every step we took, the path forward became clearer. We were on the right track. And we were ready to face whatever came next. The days after our decision not to sell the beach house were a whirlwind. We had chosen our path, and there was no turning back. But just when I thought we had finally found some stability, a new twist emerged, one that would change everything. It was a Wednesday morning when Tyler called me, his voice filled with urgency. Jess, you need to get over here right now. You won't believe what I found. I was already sitting in the kitchen, sipping my coffee when I heard the tone in his voice. Something was off. I could tell by the way his words rushed out that this wasn't just another legal document we had to deal with. What is it? I asked, a knot tightening in my stomach. I'm looking through some old family documents, and I found something that could be huge. It's about the other party's claim. They've been hiding something, Jess. Something we didn't know about. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I think they've been lying about the chain of ownership, Tyler said. There's a document I found that shows their claim doesn't line up with the real facts. If we can prove it, they might be in serious legal trouble. I was at the door in less than 5 minutes. By the time I arrived at his apartment, Tyler was pacing back and forth, a sheaf of papers clutched in his hand. He didn't even wait for me to sit down before he handed them over. These are copies of the land records that the other party filed with the court. It's all there right in black and white. They're trying to make it look like they have a direct connection to the beach house, but they don't. They've been forging documents, Jess. I took the papers from him, my hands shaking as I scanned them. At first glance, it all seemed legitimate. The dates, the signatures, the notary stamps all appeared to be in order. But Tyler was right. Something about the chain of ownership didn't quite fit. You're sure about this? I asked, looking up at him. Positive, he said. I ran the names through every possible database I could find, and none of the people listed as heirs have any actual claim to the property. They're all distant cousins, sure, but they're not directly connected to the family who originally owned it. I felt my pulse quicken. This was the break we had been waiting for. If we could prove the other side was engaging in fraudulent activity, it could end their case completely. But I couldn't let myself get too excited yet. There was still a lot of work to do. We need to get this to Jordan, I said, already thinking ahead. If we can prove they've been lying, it'll turn the entire case on its head. We have to be careful, though. If we move too fast, they might accuse us of fabricating the evidence. I know, Tyler replied, his brow furrowed. But if we wait, they could get ahead of us. We need to hit them with this as soon as possible. We immediately contacted Jordan, and he agreed to meet with us that afternoon. By the time we arrived at his office, the gravity of what we were holding in our hands was starting to settle in. Jordan didn't waste any time looking through the documents. "This is monumental," he said, looking up from the stack of papers. "If these forgeries are as you say, this could end the case right here. The only question is, how do we prove it?" I sat down, trying to keep my nerves under control. We can have a handwriting expert analyze the signatures, and we can also look for any discrepancies in the notary public's records. We'll need to dig deep, but I think we can make it work. Jordan nodded, his mind already working through the logistics. "I'll get the experts on it. But we need to be prepared for retaliation. If they're willing to forge documents to claim the property, they'll stop at nothing to hold on to it." As the days passed, we continued to dig into the other party's claim. We brought in a team of experts to verify the documents, and it didn't take long before we had solid evidence that the signatures on the land records didn't match up with the ones in the public database. It was becoming clear that they had been manufacturing documents to support their claim. Just as we were preparing to present our findings to the court, an unexpected visitor arrived at our doorstep, an old family friend, someone we hadn't seen in years. His name was Michael, and he had grown up just down the street from our beach house. He was older now, his hair graying at the temples, but his warm smile was unmistakable. "I heard about what's going on," he said as he stepped inside, his voice low. "I wanted to help." I looked at him, puzzled. "Help? How?" Michael hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I'm a private investigator now, Jess. And I know a thing or two about uncovering hidden truths. I've been following this case, and I have something that might be useful." He handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a stack of photographs, all taken from various angles of the beach house and the surrounding property. They were old photos, clearly taken years ago, but what caught my attention was the handwritten note attached to one of them. "Who's this?" I asked, my finger tracing the name written in my great-grandfather's handwriting. "Why does he have this?" Michael looked at me gravely. "He's the person who signed off on the original sale of the property decades ago. It's an obscure name, but he was one of the original owners. The problem is, he's never been mentioned in any of the other documents, and his death was conveniently left out of the legal filings the other side made." A surge of adrenaline shot through me. This was exactly the missing piece we needed. Michael had uncovered something no one else had bothered to look into, a forgotten part of the family history that was key to the legal battle. With this new information in hand, we had everything we needed to expose the other party's lies. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. We now had the proof we needed to prove the validity of our claim and the evidence to back it up. But this new revelation came with a price. An even larger target on our backs. The days that followed Michael's visit felt like a blur. We were on the cusp of something big, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking a tightrope. Every piece of new information we uncovered seemed to push us closer to victory, but also made us a bigger target. The other side wasn't going to roll over just because we had the truth on our side. That evening we gathered at the beach house. It felt like the calm before the storm. The house that had once been a symbol of family unity now stood as the battleground for something much bigger than any of us had anticipated. Tyler paced the living room floor, his hands stuffed deep in his pockets. His face was set, his jaw clenched. "They won't give up easily. This is our last shot, Jess. If we don't hit them hard now, we might not get another chance." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I know. But we have to make sure everything is perfect. No room for error." "Jordan's ready to file the motion to challenge their claim," Tyler added. The experts are prepared to testify about the forged documents. But we can't afford to make any missteps. My father had been unusually quiet throughout the evening. He sat at the old dining table, flipping through some old family albums, lost in thought. I walked over and sat beside him, the weight of his silence pressing on me. "Dad, you okay?" I asked, my voice soft. He looked up, his eyes tired, but filled with determination. "I'm fine, Jess. It's just, I keep thinking about how much our family has been through, how much we've lost and fought for. This beach house is more than just a place. It's a testament to everything we've built, everything we stand for. I don't want to let that go." "I know, Dad. We won't. We're going to win this." His eyes softened, and he placed his hand on mine. "I know you won't let us down. You've shown more heart than I ever expected. Just remember, this isn't just about the house. It's about preserving who we are." I squeezed his hand, silently agreeing. This wasn't just about a property dispute. It was about our family, our legacy, and the future we wanted to build together. We had come this far, and we couldn't afford to lose everything now. The following morning, we made our way to Jordan's office. It was time for the final push. Our experts had analyzed the documents, and the evidence of forgery was undeniable. The legal filings had been tampered with, and the signatures were all forged. There was no longer any doubt in my mind. We had the truth on our side. But we weren't the only ones preparing for battle. When we arrived, Jordan was already meeting with a representative from the court. "We've been in contact with the judge," he explained, his voice grim. "This is going to be a make-or-break moment. The other party knows they're losing, and they've started to play dirty. Expect everything from false accusations to last-minute legal tricks." I clenched my fists at my sides. They were going to fight dirty, I knew that. But I also knew that we had something they didn't. Truth. "This is it," Jordan continued. "We're filing everything today. I'm confident we'll have a chance to put this to rest once and for all." We spent the next several hours finalizing everything. The motion to challenge their claim was ready, and we had all the supporting evidence in place. The handwriting experts had confirmed the forgeries. Michael's findings had tied the missing piece of the family's history into the legal case. And our documents, everything we had worked so hard to compile, were ready to be presented. At 4:30 p.m., Jordan made the call. "It's time," he said. "We're filing now." We filed the motion to the court, and the waiting game began. It was one of the longest nights of my life. We knew the other side would try everything in their power to stall or delay. There was nothing left to do but wait. By morning, we were all exhausted, but there was an unexpected call from Jordan. "I just spoke with the judge," he said. "They've agreed to a hearing tomorrow. It's fast-tracked. This could be the end of it." I couldn't believe it. It was happening. The moment we'd all been working toward was finally here. We spent the rest of the evening preparing. Tyler was on edge, constantly pacing and making last-minute adjustments. My father and I sat in the living room, reflecting on the journey. He wasn't one for emotional speeches, but tonight, he turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "You've come a long way, Jess. When this is over, I hope you realize just how strong you are. You've carried all of us through this. No matter what happens, we'll always be proud of you." His words hit me harder than I expected. In the middle of everything that had been happening, I hadn't really taken a step back to think about how far we had come. We had fought for something bigger than just the beach house. We had fought for the essence of who we were as a family. The next day arrived with the weight of anticipation hanging heavily in the air. We arrived at the courthouse early, taking our seats in the gallery as the judge and both legal teams prepared for the hearing. The courtroom felt cold, sterile, but to me, it was the most important place in the world. Jordan stood up first, outlining the case with precision, presenting the forged documents, the missing links, and the overwhelming evidence that the other side had lied. As the other party's lawyer attempted to counter, it was clear that their defense was crumbling. The inconsistencies, the gaps in their argument, and their blatant forgeries were too much for them to overcome. And then it happened. The judge leaned forward, his voice cutting through the tense silence. I've reviewed all the evidence, and it's clear that there has been fraudulent activity on the part of the opposing party. I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff. The beach house remains in your family's possession. The words hit like a wave crashing against the shore. The weight of relief and triumph surged through me. We had won. The other side's lawyer looked stunned, as if they couldn't quite believe the outcome. But I didn't care. We had fought for this. We had uncovered the truth, and it had paid off. As we walked out of the courthouse, my family gathered around me, pulling me into a tight embrace. We had done it. We had saved the beach house, and in doing so, we had preserved our family's legacy. But even as we celebrated, I knew one thing was certain. This fight had changed us all. We weren't the same people who had walked into this battle months ago. We were stronger, united, and ready for whatever came next. The days after the court ruling felt like a surreal dream. Our victory was bittersweet, and as much as we wanted to breathe a sigh of relief, there was a lingering sense of finality in the air. We had won the beach house, our family's legacy, back, but something about the experience had left a mark on all of us. Sitting on the back deck of the beach house that evening, I looked out at the horizon, the sun slowly dipping below the waves. The colors of the sky reflected the tumult of the last few months, fiery reds, deep blues, and quiet purples. It was peaceful now, but the memories of the battles fought and won, and those we lost along the way, still hung heavy in my mind. Tyler was next to me, sipping on a beer, his face worn but a content smile playing at the corners of his lips. It was a rare moment of calm. "You did it, Jess," he said, his voice low. "You really pulled us through." I glanced at him, still amazed by the transformation in both of us since the beginning of this journey. When we first started, we were just a pair of siblings struggling to keep a piece of our family intact. But now, we had been through something that had changed us. Forever. "It wasn't just me," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "It was all of us. You, Dad, even Michael. Everyone played a part in this." Tyler shook his head. "Yeah, but you were the one who kept us going. When everything seemed like it was falling apart, you were the one who pushed forward." I felt the weight of his words. It hadn't been easy. It had taken everything I had to keep going, fighting not just for the beach house, but for what it represented, our family, our heritage, and the future we wanted to build together. Along the way, I had questioned my own strength, wondered if I had it in me to see it through. But as I sat here now, I knew I was stronger than I had ever imagined. "You've changed too," I said, nudging him with my elbow. "Remember when you wanted to sell the place without a second thought? You've become the protector of this family, just like Dad." He chuckled softly. "I guess we all had to grow up, huh?" The sound of footsteps behind us caught our attention, and we turned to see our father approaching. He had been a quiet presence throughout the entire ordeal, always there but never in the spotlight. It was hard to read him sometimes, but I knew the victory meant as much to him as it did to all of us. He sat down beside us, his hands resting on his knees, looking out at the ocean. For a long moment, none of us spoke. It was as if the weight of everything that had happened had finally caught up with us. "We're going to be okay now," Dad said finally, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "The house is still ours. But that's not what matters most, is it?" I raised an eyebrow, looking at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what really matters is that we came together as a family. We fought together. And through all the pain, the betrayal, and the doubt, we're still here. We've got each other, and that's worth more than any property or any amount of money." His words hit me hard. I had been so focused on the beach house, on winning this battle, that I had almost forgotten what had truly been at stake. It wasn't just about the house. It was about us, about holding on to what we had built together as a family. I looked at Tyler, then back at Dad, and for the first time in what felt like ages, a real smile broke across my face. It wasn't a smile of relief or triumph. It was a smile of understanding. We had been through something that no one could take away from us. "Dad's right," Tyler said, breaking the silence. This is what's important." We all sat there for a while longer, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The world around us was quiet, still, but the journey we had just completed was anything but that. It had been a roller coaster ride, full of highs and lows, but we had made it through together. The next day, we decided to hold a small family gathering at the beach house. It wasn't a reunion like the one that had been canceled months ago. This time, it was just us, the ones who had fought and stuck together through it all. We didn't need anyone else to validate our victory. We had everything we needed right here. We spent the afternoon walking along the beach, reminiscing about old memories and creating new ones. There were no arguments, no tensions, just a peaceful sense of togetherness that had been missing for so long. The house was more than just a structure. It was a symbol of our resilience, of what we had overcome, and the strength we had found in each other. As the evening drew to a close and the family gathered around the fire pit, roasting marshmallows and telling stories, I couldn't help but reflect on the path we had taken to get here. From the shock of being left out of the family reunion to the long months of legal battles, it had been a journey I never could have predicted. But as I looked around at the people who mattered most, Tyler, Dad, and even Michael, who had become an unexpected ally in all this, I realized something important. We hadn't just fought for the beach house. We had fought for each other. And in the end, that was the real victory. It's funny how the most defining moments of your life often don't come with grand fireworks or dramatic speeches. Sometimes they come in the quiet, unspoken moments when you look around and realize that the journey was never about the destination, but about the people who walked beside you. The morning after our small family gathering, I woke up early, feeling a calmness I hadn't felt in months. The sun streamed through the windows of the beach house, casting a golden glow on everything. For the first time in so long, I didn't feel the weight of the past pressing down on me. The beach house was ours, and more importantly, so was the family. Tyler was already in the kitchen, brewing coffee. He didn't even look up when I walked in. Instead, he just handed me a cup and gestured to the window. "We've earned this," he said quietly, his eyes focused on the waves crashing against the shore. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. "We sure have." Dad came in a few minutes later, still in his pajamas, but there was a lightness in his step. He wasn't a man prone to expressions of emotion, but there was something in his smile that told me everything I needed to know. "So," he began, taking a seat at the table, "what's next for us?" I paused, considering his question. It wasn't a rhetorical one. The beach house was no longer a symbol of conflict or betrayal. It was just home. And now that the battle had been won, we were faced with the question of what came next. "I think we should hold on to it," I said after a moment. "It's been in the family for generations, and it's more than just a house. It's our legacy. But it's also a place we need to make our own, no more baggage. We start fresh." Tyler nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Yeah, and no more secrets. From now on, it's all out in the open. No more hiding." Dad looked out at the ocean for a moment before he spoke again. "What matters now is that we're together. We've rebuilt something important, ourselves. We've learned that our family isn't just defined by what we own, but by how we treat each other." His words lingered in the air, and for the first time, I realized how much this journey had changed me. I had started out fighting for something material, something that symbolized my family's past. But what I had gained in the process was far greater than the beach house itself. I had gained the realization that family wasn't about ownership. It was about trust, love, and the willingness to fight for each other, no matter the cost. The phone rang, breaking the stillness of the morning, and I reached for it instinctively. "It's Jordan," I said, glancing at the caller ID. I picked up the phone, not knowing what to expect. "Hey, Jordan." His voice came through the line, crackling with excitement. "Jess, I've got great news. The opposing party has decided to drop the appeal. The judge's ruling stands. The beach house is officially yours, your father's, and Tyler's. It's over. The fight is truly behind you. I let out a breath I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. That's it? It's really over. Yep. You're all clear. No more legal battles. No more threats. The house is yours to keep, and there's nothing left to worry about. I shared the news with Tyler and Dad, and the weight of it finally settled in. There would be no more fighting for what was ours. The beach house was no longer just a place. It was a symbol of everything we had overcome and the future we could now embrace. That afternoon, we made our way down to the beach. The house was quiet, the sand smooth beneath our feet. It was surreal to think that just a few months ago, we had been on the brink of losing it all. And now here we were, stronger than ever, united in a way we hadn't been for years. Do you think the family will ever fully accept it? Tyler asked, breaking the silence. I paused, watching the waves roll in. I don't know, but I don't need their approval anymore. We've made our own path. This is our home now, and we'll make it ours no matter what. Dad chuckled. They'll come around. You'll see. Family always does. The truth was, I didn't care what anyone else thought anymore. Our family had been through the fire, and we had come out the other side. What mattered now was that we were here, together, ready to face whatever came next. As we stood there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized that we had everything we needed. We had each other. And we had a new beginning. The sound of the ocean filled the air as we stood together, the world stretched out before us. We had fought, we had lost, we had won, but most importantly, we had rediscovered the meaning of family. And no matter what came next, I knew we were ready. The legacy of the beach house wasn't just about bricks and mortar, it was about the bond we had rebuilt. And that, more than anything, was something no one could ever take away. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?